Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. On this Friday night, the 12th of April, 2019, we did an earlier live stream for Patreon members a couple of hours ago, but I did want to hit an open live stream for everybody because of the fact that it looks like this is going to be a very busy weekend from the standpoint of severe weather. So let's get right to it. I hope everybody had a great day and that you have a nice weekend planned, no matter what the weather happens to be, but just be sure to stay safe, especially if you're in line for for severe weather. Right now, well, we no longer have that that cornucopia of colors on the watches and warnings map tonight. We've got a few flood watches up in northeastern New York and up in Vermont because of the rain that is coming through there, not just tonight, but also for Sunday night into Monday. Some residual freezes and frosts in the middle Mississippi Valley back into Kansas. Also, we've got winter weather advisories up in northern Texas, up near Amarillo. This is really interesting how this area just 2 days ago sitting with temperatures up in the low and middle 90s, and they're going to probably see a little bit of snow in the mix from the precipitation that's coming down with the developing low in East Texas. Hard to imagine, but it does happen. There's leftover cold air from the old plain storm that's in the Great Lakes. Not too much happening in the west. A couple of winter weather advisories in the northern Cascades there, but that's really about it. Want to at least bring up the WPC's Weather Prediction Center's rainfall forecast map for the next 7 days because it is going to be substantial throughout the Mississippi Valley with rainfall amounts in excess of half a foot in some areas. You can see how widespread it is from down near the Gulf Coast going all the way up to Wisconsin and into the Great Lakes. And some of that rain, into the heavier rains into the Ohio Valley and Northeast, a little bit less as you get down into the Southeast. That's going to be a bit more convective in nature. And in the West, not a whole lot. Rainfall amounts from Northern California up to the Pacific Northwest, ranging from about 1 to maybe 3 inches spread out over the next 7 days. And there's still ample precipitation forecast for the Rockies on the order of a couple of inches of liquid, and of course some of that is going to wind up being in the form of snow. So let's jump off over now to the Storm Prediction Center with regards to what's going on tonight. We have a couple of areas of risk. We have actually three. A marginal risk for severe weather is in East Central North Carolina and in Central Virginia. And then we have a small area of marginal risk across parts of southern Louisiana and southwest Mississippi. And then the new area that's blossoming out is the slight risk and marginal risk that you see from west central Texas on northeastward. Now that is with the newly developing low that's going to be moving through over the weekend and moving eventually into the northeast. And the risks are going to be substantial for severe weather this weekend. First off, starting with tomorrow, it is you don't see a moderate risk on the maps from SPC too often, so you know they mean business when they have it here. And there it is. This is for Saturday, a moderate risk of severe weather across northern Louisiana over into Mississippi and southern Arkansas. This moderate risk area, by the way, is where SPC thinks there's the greatest threat for tornadoes. And we also have the larger enhanced risk from East Texas all the way to the Mississippi-Alabama state line. And then, of course, we get to slight risk and marginal risk. So the severe weather that forms later tonight will be still around tomorrow morning in Texas, and then gradually you're going to see the severe weather break out throughout the risk area that's indicated. Now for Sunday, and this is going to play for the Masters, with the weather system moving eastward, we have a very large area of enhanced risk on the map here covering much of Georgia, western and south and North Carolina, westernmost Virginia, a good chunk of West Virginia, southern Ohio, eastern Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, down into eastern Alabama. And of course, you see the larger area of slight risk takes you from the Ohio Valley through the Tennessee Valley down to the Gulf Coast. So a busy weekend indeed. The Storm Prediction Center says that for Sunday, it seems that the risk is more toward toward thunderstorms with damaging winds and hail, as opposed to tornadoes. Although they don't rule out the possibility that there could be a few tornadoes with the Sunday risk zone. We saw severe weather occur early in the very early in the spring, in the meteorological spring, when we got out of February and moved into March. Then it kind of went into a bit of a lull for a while, and now we're seeing it pick up again with the very, very active pattern that we have. Quick look at radars tonight. This is, remember folks, it's 8:05 Eastern Time, so if you're watching this on a replay, you're seeing dated material, so be sure to check your local radar, and for any watches and warnings for your particular area by going to the National Weather Service website, weather.gov, and go to your local National Weather Service office. Tonight, with this first cold front, we have some downpours and a couple of thunderstorms moving across Pennsylvania. There's a warm front moving through my area, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. I'll show you on the surface map in a moment. And these showers and storms extend southward. We do have a bit of a line here in east central North Carolina. So the batch that you see down in North Carolina and southern Virginia, this is inside that marginal risk area that SPC had. Not too much going on in Florida today. Some scattered cells down in southern Georgia and parts of South Carolina. And in that second area of marginal risk, you see this smaller area of thunderstorms in east central Louisiana and in parts of southwestern Mississippi. We've got scattered showers down in the southwest and all sorts of scattered precip up the Rockies and on up into the Pacific Northwest. We still, by the way, have some remnant snows going on the west side of the old storm. We will call it the old storm. It's taken 3 days for it to go from Colorado up toward Lake Superior, and it's still producing some snows, although the accumulating snows are just about done. You know what? I just let me bring up, as a whole, the snowfall analysis from what the storm produced. I'm going to go out. We'll go out the full 72 hours so you can see the whole thing here. But the red is these are 18-inch snow amounts. They actually occurred further west than what was being modeled. The 1 foot snows going into southwestern Minnesota. This was an area that the forecasts were going for 2 feet plus. It really kind of underperformed this area by 50%, but still, a foot of snow is a foot of snow. And the heavier snows also that extended down a bit further south into parts of northern Nebraska. You had this arm that pushed eastward through southern Minnesota. This is through this morning, 8 a.m. So I don't know that much has fallen in addition today, but at least through 8 a.m. this morning. Minneapolis got 6 out of this. St. Paul, I believe, got 8. And that snow extended into Wisconsin. Milwaukee getting 2. You see where the southern edge was about Milwaukee to Madison. Just keep going there, Sioux Falls, and so on. And it also did underperform a bit in northeastern Colorado. But you know what? It's a spring storm, and for snow lovers in that area, it was certainly a bonus to see blizzard conditions this time of year. Not unheard of, unusual, but not unheard of. The tendency is to make these things historical and these sort of epic events by some, when in reality they really aren't quite that. Okay, and in terms of strength, by the way, this was no where near as strong as that cyclone from a few weeks ago that went into the Great Lakes. The lowest pressure right now has filled up to a 996. This is the 18Z analysis. We'll put up the 21Z analysis. And the low is, just about on the tip of Lake Superior there. You can see in the east, we've got this warm front. I was outside a little while ago out where I am in southeastern Westchester County, and definitely the warm front, you could feel that it went through. The humidity was up, and the temperatures jumped up into the 60s. And here's the warm front now, cutting across Long Island through upstate New York, right along the state lines of Vermont and Massachusetts and Connecticut. And the warm sector is pushed all the way up into upstate New York and up through Lake Ontario, the cold front back into western Pennsylvania. And ahead of it, in Virginia, North Carolina, you're seeing these temperatures and dew points, temperatures into the 70s, dew points into the mid and even some upper 60s. So the air is fairly juiced up here. And also in southeastern Louisiana, you've got some fairly juicy air here with dew points in the upper 60s and temperatures in the upper 70s to low 80s. And now we're starting to see, as we go into the southwest, you begin to see the energy that's coming down with the next weather system that is going to be the player for the weekend. So let's take you through what the models are doing here. Starting with the upper air, we're in this very active pattern. You've got a deep low south and east of Green, sort of halfway between, well, not quite halfway between Greenland and the Azores. It looks like it's closer to the southern tip of Greenland than the Azores. Big ridge that pops up in the middle from off the Atlantic seaboard on up into Maine. You've got the remnant storm from the last 2 days now, the upper feature, the cutoff low there in the western lakes, and the next shortwave trough that has dropped down into the southwest. If you run it backwards, you can see where that came from, by the way. That shortwave came from the Gulf of Alaska, right there, just east of the northern Aleutians, and then drops southward around the backside of the wrapped-up storm that developed and moving now to the northeast. So now the next trough drops down even further south, and it's a fairly vigorous upper system here in that of that shortwave that's pivoting around. That's a very vigorous shortwave. You're going to have a very good inflow of tropical moisture and very warm air from the Gulf of Mexico coming in, and a pretty strong jet that whips around this upper low, particularly at the mid-levels. I saw some winds in the upper atmosphere at about the 10,000 foot level being forecasted at 50, 60, 70 knots. That's pretty substantial. So you're going to wind up with, you've got winds veering with height and changing winds and wind shear. So you're going to wind up with thunderstorms and the potential for some rotation with some of these storms that will develop. Now, of course, this upper low opens up, and the trough is actually fairly sharp and pronounced coming into the east. Unlike tonight's, which is going so far to the west, you can barely find it. This one, the upper trough holds its own as it moves to the east. So I think that the Sunday system will likely be much more vigorous than the one that we're undergoing right now. And then there's yet another system. Go back up into the Gulf of Alaska again. You can watch the next trough drop down next week, taking a similar path into the west and southwest. This one goes a little bit further north than the other two. Whoops. And rotates around and then gradually swings to the Great Lakes and to the East Coast by next weekend. So we're going to have we're going into this we're in this very busy period here with regards to storminess and severe weather that is going to be impacting especially the eastern half of the United States. Not every inch of it, but we know the areas that are at risk. Okay, so let's bring up the surface map tonight. Little pressed for time, so I'm just trying to get in here as much as possible with regards to what's happening. So here's the GFS's look. This is the new GFS from late this afternoon. The old storm sitting on the north shore of Lake Superior. The trailing cold front. This is actually valid for the present time, so it matches up fairly well. You've got snow up and down the Rockies. And here's your new low for tomorrow morning, sitting in west central Texas. And it strengthens as it moves northeast. That low moves into northeast Texas and then starts to move its way up toward western Tennessee, western Kentucky. So it's in this zone that this is where you have your enhanced risk. The precip that's shown, the GFS showing the intensity of the rainfall. These are not radar echoes, but the intensity of the rain in terms of how much is going to fall in the yellows and in the reds. It's fairly substantial here. And then that low runs to the northeast. You get into Sunday, and now you've got the enhanced risk for the eastern part of the for the U.S. I'll just remind you what that looks like. This is the one for Sunday that extends down into Georgia. This will probably impact the Masters, and you've got marginal risk going all the way up into northwest PA, touching southwestern New York State, and then coming down the eastern seaboard through Virginia, through the Carolinas, and down into northern Florida. The western fringe, you can see it there, over into Louisiana. Also, I might as well just remind you again, this is for tomorrow, the moderate risk of severe weather for northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, eastern Texas, and for a small portion of west central Mississippi. So, back to the maps we go. Let's make sure that's centered there so you can see it. So here's again the GFS for tomorrow. That's a fairly compact, strong low that comes out, runs up the west side of the Appalachians, and my area will be dealing with rains tonight into tomorrow morning. We should break out into some sun and head up into the 70s. I'm talking eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. Then Sunday, we just wait for the impact from this low. I think the dayside Sunday for my area is not going to be too bad. It may very well be like today was, with clouds and breaks of sun and a couple of odd sprinkles or showers here and there. And then Sunday night into Monday morning, when the frontal system moves on through and the low goes up into upstate New York, you're going to wind up with heavy rains and maybe even some thunderstorms with this as the front goes by. And as we move through next week, it's a little... Next week's kind of problematic because even though we do have one big shortwave that's coming down for later next week, there are some pieces that run out ahead. And that's going to probably create some cloud complications and even some shower complications for my area before the main low comes out. You can see it coming in, by the way, into the west there with heavy rains and some mountain snows in California and on up into the northwest. Then that low moves into Wyoming. This is next Wednesday now. We're in Kansas. And the GFS kind of takes it further north on recent runs. It's been sort of trending further north with this. It looks like coming, when you look at the upper air, it looks like it wants to be the furthest north of all these systems, but there might be some changes here down the road. We'll see. But this is a frontal system that comes through for late next week and into next weekend. So you know what? That's down the road. So the bottom line is that we've got the pieces here for a fairly widespread severe weather event for Saturday. This is the Storm Prediction Center's view with the moderate risk for severe weather in northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas. The other areas, of course, at risk, the enhanced risk, slight risk, and marginal risk expanding there east to west. The small area in North Carolina into southeastern Virginia. And then on Sunday, the enhanced risk that runs from the South Atlantic, from the Gulf states, the eastern half of the Gulf states, and the southeast, all the way up through the mid-Atlantic and a bit further north into the Ohio Valley. It'll certainly, I think, keep a lot of folks busy. Real fast, long range, hard to say. After next weekend, when we look at the upper air, it looks like this is the last one of the series, at least initially, but there's still more energy running around for later next week. There's an upper high that forms east of Newfoundland. The few model runs have shown this, and that can complicate things in a number of ways, and not all of them negative, by the way, at least for my area, but there are still some more short waves coming in from the Pacific that are likely to play out in some fashion as we go forward through the last days of the month. Still looks kind of busy here and kind of active. Now at this point in the long range, we're at April 28th. So we're almost into the month of May. Time does go by very quickly, doesn't it? All right, so let me just come to the board real quick. Not a whole lot of time left for me before I got to go. So let me come up to the chat board and say hi to everybody. If you are in the risks, those severe weather risk areas, please do keep alert to the developments. Reaver 501, how come the enhanced area of severe weather never gets to Long Island? You know, every once in a while you'll see. First of all, we're way too early in the thunderstorm season to see enhanced risks up in our neck of the woods. You got to really wait till we get to July and into August. So you do have to have unusual setups for it to happen. Sometimes, and there have been a few cases, I believe, there have been a couple of instances where I've certainly seen enhanced risk, and I think there was one case, I forgot, there was a big outbreak in the late 1990s, and a couple of people I know have commented that was the one time they saw SPC put up a moderate risk for severe weather up our way. We just have too cold an ocean nearby, at least for Long Island. We have too cold an ocean that has impact on thunderstorms at least into the month of July and sometimes beyond that. You have to have an almost perfect setup to see a higher risk of severe weather. And you probably can count it on your hands. Slight risk I've seen, marginal, yes. Enhanced every once in a while. Moderate, I think that was maybe the one time that I could recall. Chris Pileski, I hope I said that. P-A-W-E, Pileski. I hope I said it right, Chris. Trying to plant my onion crop. Need an extended period of warm and dry weather. That's tough. It doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon. Is the warm front crossed ice slip yet? Asks Reaver. Let me just check. Okay, let's see. Weather.gov. I'm going to just check the observation at islip and see what's happening at the moment. And islip is 56-52 south at 16, gusting to 24. I would say no. Central Park is 62. I don't think it has. It's not the strongest warm front in the world. Let me put it that way. I'm looking at the winds across Jersey. They're all pretty much from the south. Dew points in the upper 50s. Temperatures in the low 60s. You know, I'd have to look at the pressure and plot it. I would say if it probably hasn't passed. They analyze it at 21Z as basically being very close by. But again, I don't think it's the strongest warm front in the world. But I'd have to do a whole hand plot to figure out exactly where it is. Who's not feeling well? Snowy 23. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you feel better, and I hope it's in time for the weekend too. Good evening to Norman Goodwin. Welcome tonight. Do I know Christopher? You know the rest. Do you know how the weather will look for Washington, D.C. for the middle of next week? Well, while there may be some issues over eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, after Tuesday looks so. Let's see. All right, so Monday. Oh, let me go back. Sorry. All right, so Sunday night and Monday, you get the same showers down there. They go out. Weather conditions improve. Tuesday looks dry. You know, the cloud shield would probably be, it's almost like what just happened yesterday, where the cloud line set up in southern PA and across central and south Jersey. South and west of there was a decent amount of sun. You probably may not be too bad as long as the frontal boundary sets up north of you, north of DC, which I think it might. you should be okay until about Thursday, and then after that you start to get into that next weather system with showers and thunderstorms toward the end of the week. That's kind of like my quick view, okay, from what I can see. And Johnny Quest, if you're still on, I answered you privately on Facebook regarding your question about long duration tornadoes. It seems that there's some controversy over the definition of what exactly is a long duration tornado, among other things. But there was a good website there, and it's got all sorts of stats. They are relatively rare, especially the ones they broke it down in terms of how long they lasted in terms of distance, and the long duration tornadoes, according to the definition that they used, make up only about 2.5% of all tornadoes that occur. But I sent you the link to that, and you can check that out. Have you ever seen snow and ice like this in the Dakotas in April? You know what? My memory is not as good as it used to be. I don't know that it's happened in recent years. I seem to recall that it has happened. Maybe if you go back to the winter of 2013-14 or 14-15, maybe not so much 14-15. I'm going to say 13-14. Might have been a winter where we saw it up there into the month of April, but I'd have to really go back and look. I remember my area very well since I'm here and I experience it. The other stuff I got to write it down, otherwise I forget. When Amy Hogan, when the snow up north starts melting at a good clip, we should have some swollen rivers. Oh yeah, up in Maine with all the snow that you guys have had, and this month it continues, of course. Yeah, you're going to have quite the season with snow melt and mud and everything else. All right, folks, got to wrap it up here at this point. Thanks for being here tonight. It's a short version show. I went pretty quick, so hopefully we'll go get through this weekend with not a whole lot of severe weather. Whenever severe weather is forecast, it's one of those things that I really hope doesn't happen. Snow melts and other weather phenomena can be taken care of. But when you get into the serious stuff with regards to severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, flash flooding, and all the rest of it, you see the potential there. And sometimes it fizzles out, and you can only hope that is the case. It looks very dynamic. It's hard for me to imagine that there won't be severe weather in those risk areas at SPC. But you know what? You hope for the best. In the meantime, I'll probably pop on at some point this weekend. Of course, there will be posts on my Patreon platform for members. For those of you who are interested to expanding your weather experience, you can jump on and join my Patreon platform. It's just $2 a month, and here's the link for you. And I think you'll enjoy it. We did a private live stream tonight just for members only, which we do sometimes. And when weather is active, we do those on a bit more of a regular basis. Okay, so look, have a good night. Have a great weekend. We'll hopefully see you at some point over the weekend. And keep your eye to the sky and make sure that you're up to date on the weather with regards to severe weather threats if you live in those risk areas that I showed you from the Storm Prediction Center. Good night, everybody.